think it's pretty easy to guess who Yukihise is talking about when he talks about knowing somebody who was driven mad by her mother. This is my thoughts on episode 8 of Fena Pirate Princess, so let's jump into it. Opening up right where we left off, of course, Yukimaru is not doing very well. They got to get him to a doctor. And we're getting a little backstory as we see that Shitan is obviously warring for Yukimaru. We get a little insight into the moment that Hope was sunk. And they say that Kei's team was sent to go get them, but everybody's gone, and the only survivor is Yukimaru. And so they have this little moment where he's being taken care of, and Shitan is looking from a distance. It kind of shows Shitan and Yukimaru almost like rivals. Obviously, Shitan not able to kind of match up to the skill that Yukimaru has, but it kind of shows where Shitan eventually goes and finds Makaba making bows and having these reject bows, and he feels like he has some kind of similarity to those bows, so he purposely goes out of his way in order to train how to use these bows, which Yukimaru ends up helping him and kind of mentioning, well, if the arrows end up going astray, listen to where the arrow wants to go and kind of match to that, rather than letting the target lead them astray. It kind of feels like they're trying to draw a parallel here. Jumping back into the current time, we of course see that Yukimaru is going to make it. Apparently they're using this tobacco to help keep the wounds from festering. And this is when, while everybody's excited and happy that, they did all this stuff to save him, he's like, you do realize that Fena was the reason why this happened. Fena is a witch. And so they're like, they're pushing him to basically tell him the entire story. And that's when he goes into talking about what Yukihise said. She's from a family of witches. Her mother apparently at some point bewitched a man that Yukihise knew. And that's why I was saying I kind of figure at this point that it's kind of trying to pretty much zero in on that the person that Yukihise is talking about is Abel. Obviously, what do we see Abel? Like every time we see Abel, he's always thinking about this lady. He's always thinking of her mother. He's obsessed with her. He's drawing a picture of her. He can't stop talking about how he's going to eventually, see her again. So I think it's pretty clear at this point, Abel is this guy that he believes you can. Now, my question is, because of that fear that Yukihisa has, is it because Abel was a friend of his at some point and then got, he betrayed him because of the mother? That's the question mark. I'm really curious if it's an aspect of Abel's just in love with her. It's not really that she bewitched him, but in doing that, Abel kind of gave up something that Yukihisa would not see him giving up, which thus makes him believe that she's literally a witch and that she can bewitch somebody. Yes, Yukimaru ends up going into the fact that, yes, if he felt that at any point Fena was going to bewitch somebody, he was ordered to kill her. And he feels that everybody on the ship, basically at this point, is bewitched by her. And so his orders at this point would be to kill Fena. And of course, everybody's like, that's not true. She's not bewitched us. We did this on our own. We chose to go save them. And I guess from his standpoint, he's actually true. He's like, it took us so many years to gain the trust of this island. And within a week, we've shattered it. There's a pretty good correlation that he can draw there just based on that. This is when Shitan ends up leaving everybody and going up on a hill. And Fena ends up finding him up there. Well, use the dog to find him. And she confronts him and he's like, go away. I said it, just go away. Didn't they tell you that I will kill you? And this is when she pretty much sways his mindset and the idea of, she's like, I like this because she's like, if I was a witch, I would use my powers to control the bow. I wouldn't need you to train me. Don't you need to train me more? Don't you hate the idea that somebody that you trained, one of your disciples, would go out and be a bat at the bow? But yeah, that she can't fly with a broom. She doesn't have any of the capabilities that a witch should have. She's terrible at everything. So isn't that proof enough that she's not a witch? Which I kind of agree with. She kind of put it pretty well. She can't really do anything. She can't really be a witch. Obviously ignoring the fact that, she's still able to sway people's hearts, which is technically the whole point that Yukihisa was making. But anyways, it was cute, and it got to Shitan. I mean, again, I don't think that Shitan was necessarily against Fena to begin with, but I do believe that Yukihisa's words were technically affecting how he thought of her. Well, if I'm having feelings for her, if everybody else is following her, if we made this critical decision based on her, obviously Yukihisa was correct. Like, she technically can do this. I almost thought they were going to do this whole route where it would have Shitan realize at some point, he does like Fena. Obviously, he likes Yukimaru more, But even as a family type of feeling for her, having him essentially say reluctantly, well, I'll be bewitched then. I thought they were going to go that route with him, but yeah, it was kind of cute. And in the final scene, we have Yukimaru and Fena having a little bit of moment together. Kind of wakes up to not being able to feel his legs, and he panics trying to wake up Fena, and then he clunks her on the head. So we knew at that point that Yukimaru was fine. But no, he's like, yeah, I thought that I lost my legs, and you wouldn't get up. So you have this little moment where they're on the roof, and it's kind of like a self-discovery type of moment here where they're really trying to figure out themselves. And Fena's really kind of confused at this point, based on everything that Shaitan was saying, but everything else surrounding what she learned from Abel, she doesn't know who she is. She's like, I started out as Fena Hauptmann, then I became Fena of Shangri-La, and then I became the white marginal, and now people call me princess or witch. So she can't really figure out exactly who she is. And Yukimaru seems to have, he's pretty convinced in the idea that when they get to Eden, she'll be able to figure herself out. Like that, the answers should be there. He's really convinced that they need to get to Eden where she needs to be. He feels so desperately that she needs to be there that she'll discover herself once they get there. And he also says, we may be able to find out why you and I met. It seems like at this point, they're really kind of trying to hint that Yukimaru is something special. And I think that especially with that statement, like that they're somehow connected to Eden, that possibly Yukimaru is going to end up being something special. I will admit that that's kind of an out of place statement, but still, it seems like that's what they're kind of hinting at. But no, he's convinced at this point, I'm going to help you get to Eden. I will protect you. I will put my life on the line for you. And then that's when he kind of kneels. Well, he's hurting at first, and then he kneels down and kisses her hand, and that completely flutters her. Technically, the final scene is seeing Abel once again saying how he's going to see Helena again, and he's painting fruit. I really think that Abel's like the creepiest character in the show. Which again, I guess technically goes to Yukihise's comment that if it is Abel that he's talking about, Abel seems pretty darn bewitched by Helena. He seems pretty crazy. I mean, granted, most people when they're in love with somebody and they lose that somebody, it's something that nobody ever gets over. It's something that they stay with you even beyond the life. So it does make sense that Abel would still care for her even though she's passed, and it would be difficult for him to give up. It's not necessarily have to be a magical bewitching or anything like that. It's a mourning process. It's an inability to give something up that you've lost. So, but at the same time, Yukihise might see it differently. There's also a cultural difference that we have here between the East and the West. So do have to keep that in mind. Yeah, overall, pretty solid episode. Really getting into Shaitan's conflict there, seeing a little bit of backstory between Shaitan and Yukimaru, having Yukimaru brought back nearly dead, trying to get stronger so that he can help Yukimaru, eventually taking up the bow, a terrible bow at that, and then eventually getting to this point where he has to accept this path that they're all taking along with Yukimaru and the rest of the crew. And I'm curious where they'll go from here, if they're just going to go straight to Eden and just completely give up the island. It seems to be what they're insinuating with Yukimaru's statement, that he's going to get Fena to Eden. So that implies that their goal is not, now that they know where it's at, to go back to the island, is to go straight for this Eden, which is kind of interesting. I didn't really think they were going to take it that route. I thought they were just going to go back to the island and seek forgiveness and then hopefully get a chance to go to Eden. Yeah, I was really surprised that we didn't see Kay this episode. I think once they brought Yukimaru to the doctor, I thought immediately we were going to jump right to Kay showing up. Even the scene with Fena and Yukimaru, I was like, okay, he's just going to jump out of nowhere. Watch. I guess next episode is when we'll see that. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Fena Pirate Princess episode 8. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like down below. Comment, let me know what's thought of the episode. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share this video if you can. Support us on Patreon if you can. We definitely appreciate everybody that does. And y'all take care.